There's a common phrase among urbanists that goes, "You're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic," referring to drivers who complain about congestion, not realizing that they are contributing to it. Suburbanites will say that the city is noisy, not realizing that most of that noise comes from suburbanites driving their cars into the city. Some people will complain that building bike lanes or transit lanes will make pollution worse because cars will spend more time idling in traffic, not realizing that providing viable alternatives to driving will mean fewer people need to drive in the first place. British psychologist Ian Walker refers to this as motor normativity, also known as car brain. Many cities in North America are designed exclusively for cars. It didn't used to be that way, nor does it have to be. But because driving is so normalized, people view cars as the default form of transportation and can't comprehend how it's possible to live without them. Car crashes and dangerous driving are seen as unavoidable. It's just an everyday part of modern life. I mean, there's an entire genre on YouTube with thousands of videos dedicated to car crash compilations. And there's even an entire TV show called Canada's Worst Driver that has over 14 seasons and 115 episodes.
Stopped at a green light. You're stopped at a green light?
Yes.
This assumption that everyone should drive and has to drive results in many bad drivers on the road because, believe it or not, some people are just not cut out to drive. And that's completely fine. Yet, we consistently build cities exclusively for cars and design streets that prioritize vehicle speeds rather than the safety of people. We need to change the way we approach road safety because, as of now, bad driving has become normalized.
What are you saying, fam? Yo! What, fam? Yo!
Toronto's most notorious speed camera was just taken down by vandals.
Not only are full self-driving cars 1,000 times safer, it would fix traffic, and you'll be able to drive everywhere at like 120 miles an hour.
In March of 2020, at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, U.S. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin made this statement. "We don't shut down the economy because tens of thousands of people die on the highways. It's a risk we accept so we can move about." Over 40,000 Americans die each year from traffic collisions, and hundreds of thousands are severely injured, many of which face permanently life-altering conditions. To put that into perspective, that's equivalent to a fully loaded Airbus A380, the world's largest commercial aircraft, crashing into the ground and killing everyone on board every single week. This has reached crisis levels as pedestrian fatalities have increased dramatically over the past decade, a trend not seen in other developed countries. So no, it's not because of cell phones. But in America, we brush this off as being the cost of doing business. That's just the price we pay to keep the wheels of the economy turning. The two biggest culprits of this are vehicle speed and vehicle size. Anyone who knows a bit of physics understands that the formula for kinetic energy is half an object's mass times velocity squared. So as cars get bigger and heavier and as people drive faster, the chances of dying from a collision increase exponentially. But in the US and Canada, it's widely accepted to treat speed limits like suggestions, that it's okay to drive 10 or 20 over the speed limit because everyone does it, and the police aren't gonna bother ticketing you. One study finds that 42% of drivers don't even consider themselves to be speeding until they're 10 to 14 miles per hour over the speed limit. One psychological reason for this is that the vast majority of drivers don't face any consequences for driving dangerously most of the time. Speeding, running red lights, and driving while impaired happen very often, but for an average person, the chances of getting into a collision are pretty rare. I mean, if it wasn't, nobody would be driving. But this makes many drivers overconfident. They see that their actions don't have immediate consequences, so they're much more likely to keep doing it. Studies show that most people believe they are better drivers than they actually are, and people tend to underestimate the risks that come with breaking the rules. Speed is one of the biggest reasons why cars crash into buildings so often here in North America. The official number is poorly documented, but this is estimated to happen at least 100 times a day in the US, and many experts still think that's an undercount. Cars crashing onto sidewalks have also become so common that this was a genuine tweet from the Colorado State Patrol. They're basically telling people to only walk one way down the sidewalk so you can make eye contact with the distracted driver who's about to kill you. I mean, it's not like there's anything we can do about it. When we try to do enforcement through speed cameras, speed traps, or ticketing, many people scoff at it, claiming they're just cash grabs or that they're useless. They'll claim that speeding is actually safer because you're just going with the flow of traffic, which is true, but everyone is still speeding. Some people will take this further and go out of their way to block or destroy speed cameras. In Toronto, there are over 500 cases of this in a single year, and one particular camera was spray painted on 31 times over the span of just a few months. Here's Parkside Drive, a street that's notorious for speeding cars, aggressive driving, and frequent collisions. Over the past 10 years, there have been over 1,400 collisions on this road, leading to 5 serious injuries and 3 deaths. After a collision in 2021 involving 5 vehicles and the death of a 70-year-old couple, the City of Toronto reduced the speed limit and installed a speed camera, which has since issued over 63,000 tickets and generated nearly $7 million, making Parkside Drive one of the most ticketed roads in Toronto. According to the city, these measures have reduced the average speed, but some vehicles were still caught going over 120 kilometers an hour. The only thing here that's keeping people from driving faster is all the traffic. That speed camera was vandalized earlier this year because, of course it was, and recently, someone chopped it down like a tree. A few days later, the city put it back up, but on the same day, someone chopped it down again. I don't think speed cameras are effective at reducing speeding, and there are much better ways of slowing down cars, which I'll get to later. But it really shows just how normalized it is for drivers to break the rules when cyclists are constantly scrutinized for rolling through a stop sign, while this is considered heroic. Traffic collisions have become synonymous with the term accident, as if these collisions are unexpected and unpreventable. Recently, I've been really into those airline crash documentaries. You know those videos that dive super deep into aviation incidents and why they happened? If you watch any of those, you would know that crash investigations are complicated. They don't just blame the pilots and fire them. They go super deep into all the underlying psychological and systemic factors that led to the crash. The airlines restructure pilot training and adopt stricter maintenance procedures. The aircraft manufacturers improve their technology and quality control. Well, unless you're Boeing. But the point here is that it's complicated, and it's all done so that we're 99.9% sure that a similar crash won't happen again. Now compare that to the way we treat car crashes. In North America, there's a huge emphasis on personal responsibility. Whenever a car crash occurs, the conversation is always about whose fault it was. That person did something wrong to cause the crash, and if we all be more careful next time, we can avoid those crashes. They're always blamed on the behavior of individual road users, as if that's the only factor that leads to crashes. They'll say that our roads aren't inherently dangerous, stupid people are dangerous. This is one of the main arguments people make for autonomous vehicles. Driverless cars will remove human error from our roads. Our cities will be safer than ever. You'll sometimes hear about the techno-utopian future where every car is self-driving and communicates with each other in real time, allowing them to flow through intersections seamlessly. But man, I would hate to have to cross this thing. The very first fatal collision involving an autonomous vehicle happened here in Tempe, Arizona. A woman jaywalked across this road at night and was hit by one of Uber's first autonomous vehicles. The crash report concluded that the person in the vehicle was at fault for not paying attention, the woman was at fault for jaywalking, and Uber was at fault because their vehicle didn't even classify them as a pedestrian until 1.2 seconds before the crash. But do you really think people have the attention spans to just sit in a self-driving car and look out the window in case anything happens? Back in 2013, when Google was first testing its autonomous vehicles, they gave it out to several employees, telling them to always pay attention, never take their hand off the steering wheel, and that hidden cameras would be watching them. Despite these warnings, people were texting, putting on makeup, and falling asleep, all while they were driving on a highway. There have also been several cases of people getting arrested or killed while riding in a driverless Tesla, despite Elon Musk claiming that they are feature-complete, full self-driving. People just become reliant on technology very quickly, so if drivers are expected to manually take over when something goes wrong, what's gonna happen when people start driving less and lose their driving skills? Better technology and automation allows us to push the limits. Add backup cameras to vehicles and people might stop looking over their shoulders. Add lane change assistance technology and people might stop using their mirrors. It would be naive to think that technology will just make all our problems go away without introducing new problems that we didn't even consider before. Going back to that crash in Arizona, this is where it took place. It's effectively a 4-lane highway sitting right beside a park and a concert venue. Before the crash, this median had a decorative brick pathway, which looks a lot like a pedestrian path. Yet there isn't a single crosswalk unless you walk nearly 400 feet to the north or 2,700 feet across the river to the south. But instead of actually adding more crosswalks and redesigning the road to slow down cars, the city replaced the brick pathways with rocks and added more signs prohibiting pedestrians. This is ultimately the issue here. Traffic engineers actively design roads that are hostile to people walking for the sake of speeding up cars. So is it really a surprise that speeding and road safety are such major issues here? We already have these solutions to our transportation problems, but most of them involve slowing down the cars, which is just unacceptable for American cities. Instead, we get told that better technology and self-driving cars will solve all of our problems without fixing the underlying issue, which is our inefficient and dangerous car-dependent transportation system. It's like a drug addict claiming he'll be rich and successful without changing his unhealthy addictions. Decades of road safety research and best practices from around the world show that road and street design is one of the biggest factors in speed-related collisions. Wide, flat, and straight roads make it easy and comfortable to drive at high speeds. But narrow streets with curves and obstacles like trees or bollards will make drivers uncomfortable driving too fast and reduce the damage if a crash does occur. We need to accept that when a driver crashes onto the sidewalk, they are the ones to face the consequences and not the innocent people walking on the sidewalk. A great example is the Vision Zero strategy first adopted by Sweden in the 90s, or the sustainable safety approach from the Netherlands. When a crash occurs, human error is considered, but they also look at how the environment and the design of the street can be changed to avoid future crashes. This is how Oslo, the capital of Norway, achieved 0 pedestrian fatalities in 2019. Hoboken in New Jersey hasn't had a single pedestrian death in the past 7 years after the city redesigned several intersections to improve visibility. Going back to Parkside Drive, the city has proposed redesigning the street and adding bike lanes, which are proven to make streets safer for all road users. But this has upset many people because it would slow down vehicle travel times by 1 to 3 minutes. Mind you, this is a street that runs right in between a residential neighborhood and the largest public park in the city, with sports facilities, playgrounds, and a zoo for children. So I really don't agree with framing this issue in terms of traffic flow as opposed to safety. But you'll see this constantly, people opposing road safety improvements like bike lanes even on small residential neighborhood streets, or even major streets that are lined with shops and have rapid transit under it. They actively fight against infrastructure that will save people's lives, all because it would slow down their cars by a few minutes. If you were to go back 100 years, however, this attitude would be completely different. In the 1920s, it was perfectly fine for people to just walk across the street. Streets were universally recognized as shared public spaces. But as cars became faster and started killing thousands of people every year, they were viewed as deadly intruders, and people overwhelmingly wanted strict regulations like speed governors on them. Whenever a motor vehicle struck someone walking, the motorist was fully responsible, because, they were the ones driving a big fast vehicle on a busy street. The auto industry knew that cars were fast and deadly, but tight regulations would destroy their profits. So they spent millions of dollars on massive campaigns to redefine the streets as a space exclusively for cars. They lobbied the government and actively fought against measures to limit their speed. They sponsored school safety campaigns to brainwash children, and they invented the term jaywalking to shame people for crossing the street. Within just a decade, the auto industry had gaslighted everyone into believing streets were motor thoroughfares, and people walking were now the intruders rather than the victims. Today, the way we treat bicycles and electric micromobility is the same way we treated cars back in the 1920s. When it comes to cars, we're willing to sacrifice safety for the sake of speed and convenience. But when it comes to bicycles or scooters, they're treated like a major safety hazard. Sure, there are cases where e-bike riders have injured people on the sidewalk, but the vast majority of fatal collisions and injuries are caused by cars, and we don't pay much attention to this anymore because it's so normalized. Micromobility isn't the problem, it's part of the solution. Encouraging people to cycle instead of drive will make our streets safer, because the safest car trip is the one that never happens in the first place. Here's the thing though, in many parts of the US and Canada, you literally cannot go anywhere without a car, which means that children and people's grandmas with poor eyesight are forced to drive, otherwise they have no independent mobility at all. Yet as soon as a child turns 16, learning to drive is seen as a rite of passage, a step they take to finally become an adult. That learning to drive grants you the freedom and independence to go wherever you want. And if you don't do this, people look down on you and tell you to grow up. How other people have to drive you around for the rest of your life. Or they'll assume you're just a drunk driver who got their license taken away. Car dependency forces people who don't want to drive or shouldn't be driving to drive. Sure, driverless cars might help, but a lack of accessibility is a problem inherently caused by car-dependent planning. So, are they really necessary? In many walkable neighborhoods, it's already common to see children or old people getting around by themselves and being fully independent. Even in the suburbs, like here in Markham, Ontario, this bike lane allows many seniors to safely bike themselves to this mall, which is a vital community gathering space for Chinese Canadians. AVs are not here to save the planet, they're here to save the auto industry. When I imagine a city of the future, I don't think of this. I think of this. Pedestrianized plazas that encourage people to walk around and relax. Massive transportation hubs with fast, frequent intercity trains and automated metros. High-quality bicycle paths and giant bicycle parking garages to encourage active transportation. And lots of greenery and rivers integrated into the urban fabric. Traffic, pollution, and road safety are simply not as big of an issue in these places, and they achieve this without any fancy sci-fi technology at all. There's so many good alternatives here that the only people who drive here are those that really want to or need to. And because those drivers likely walk, cycle, or take transit themselves, they're much more sympathetic to people outside a car. Are there bad drivers here? Yeah, probably. But bad driving is just not as normalized as it is in car-dependent societies. The solution is not banning cars, just like how we didn't just flat-out ban cigarettes. But we did ban smoking from bars, restaurants, and most indoor places. We did force cigarette companies to cover their packaging with health warnings. Cars are obviously different. They're much more useful and have completely changed the way we travel and move goods. And sure, if you live on a farm in the middle of Nebraska, yeah, you probably need a car. This whole channel is probably irrelevant to you. But cars are also much more deadly and destructive to people and the environment. So for most people living in dense urban areas, limiting cars from certain places makes a lot of sense. We can start by pedestrianizing streets and slowly building wider sidewalks and bike lanes. Once we've expanded our public transit system and densified our downtowns, we can introduce congestion pricing and add stricter penalties for reckless driving. When smoking bans were first introduced, many people were against it, but after a while, people saw how great it was, and now you can never imagine going back. Likewise, congestion pricing in New York has made a lot of people upset because people don't like change, especially when it affects them. But I would bet you $9 that a year after congestion pricing gets implemented, most people are gonna forget about it because they'll see just how much better it makes the city. This happened when cars were banned from Central Park. People were angry, but now you would be crazy to think that we should let cars back in. The same thing is happening to Hyde Park in Toronto. The city started closing it to cars on weekends, which has summoned every single Karen to protest about how they can't drive their 90-year-old grandma into the park anymore. But as surveys from the city show, most people would prefer a car-free park. Bad driving is normalized, but we can change what's normal through slow incremental steps. It just takes some time getting used to.